Coming up on Diplomatic Channel, U.S. allies defy President Donald Trump by voting in favor of the United Nations resolution, which calls for the U.S. to drop its recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital. The Ugandan parliament amends the constitution to allow President Yoweri Museveni to seek a sixth term in office. And French President Emmanuel Macron visits Niger, vows to defeat jihadists in the Sahel. Hello and welcome, and a Merry Christmas to all our viewers. I'm Temitope Fagbemi. We begin with the UN General Assembly resolution, which calls on President Donald Trump's administration to withdraw its recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Ahead of the vote, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, wrote a letter to her fellow ambassadors saying that she and President Donald Trump will be watching as ballots are cast and that the president will be taking their votes personally. The unusual letter, with its veiled threats, was openly supported by President Trump, who said he and Ms. Haley both agreed to send that message to the other ambassadors.
For all of these nations that take our money and then they vote against us at the Security Council, or they vote against us potentially at the Assembly, they take hundreds of millions of dollars and even billions of dollars and then they vote against us. Well, we're watching those votes. Let them vote against us. We'll save a lot. We don't care.
Despite this threat from the U.S. President Donald Trump, over 100 countries voted in favor of a United Nations General Assembly resolution calling for the United States to withdraw its decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. The vote was called at the request of Arab and Muslim countries who say they will not be intimidated by the U.S. But Mr. Trump's warning did appear to have some impact, with 9 countries voting against the resolution and 35 abstaining. Togo was the only African state to vote against the UN General Assembly resolution. Many African states, including South Africa, Nigeria and Ethiopia, voted for the resolution, while others such as Uganda, Rwanda and South Sudan abstained. In total, 128 countries voted for the resolution, which Israel says is unacceptable.
Israel completely rejects this preposterous resolution. Jerusalem is our capital, always was, always will be. But I do appreciate the fact that a growing number of countries refuse to participate in this theater of the absurd. So I appreciate that, and especially I want to again express our thanks to President Trump and Ambassador Haley for their stalwart defense of Israel and their stalwart defense of the truth.
Meanwhile, Palestinians launched more anti-U.S. protests across the Palestinian territories a day after the UN General Assembly vote. Israeli gunfire killed a 24-year-old Palestinian and wounded 10 other protesters during a stone-throwing demonstration in southern Gaza Strip. Protests also took place in other locations across the Gaza near the border fence with Israel, including Gaza City, where protesters threw stones at the soldiers who used tear gas to disperse the crowd. Protests also erupted in all of the West Bank's 7 cities and in East Jerusalem. Health officials said at least 5 Palestinians were wounded by rubber bullets fired by Israeli security forces, who also used tear gas. The status of Jerusalem, which holds Muslim, Jewish and Christian holy sites, is one of the thorniest obstacles to a peaceful deal between Israel and the Palestinians.
The United States is a country that boasts of strong democratic values, but it also tries to promote abroad. So what does it mean for the U.S. to threaten other nations ahead of a UN General Assembly vote? I asked my guest on the program, Mr. Chukwuemeka Eze, a senior lecturer of international law at the Nasarawa State University, that question. Now, what do you make of the U.S. threat to cut funding to all the countries that voted against the U.S. at the UN General Assembly?
What I make of the threat is there's what we call retortions in international law. What the U.S. has said is not entirely new. It is just saying that we'll cut economic aid to those that will vote against us. I think they said it in a non-diplomatic language. It is not out of place in international law that you apply reciprocity. But basically the way it was rushed and spoke like a policeman of the world. So the way it was said, the words choosing and the manner it was said, I think got many people rankled.
Now, for a country that prides itself on its democratic values, is it right for it to threaten nations ahead of a vote to vote in your favor? Is that democratic?
I think this is not the issue of being democratic or undemocratic. If you go down memory lane since 1980, the United States have been playing along on this issue of Jerusalem. They have been voting in the United States Security Council either in favor or abstaining of the international consensus. It is the rashness, not that the United States have not always been treading this path since 1980. They've been treading this path that, oh, we want Jerusalem to be recognized one way or the other. Sometimes they were not forceful. It had always been seen as part of the internal politics of the United States of America. It has been elevated to become a part of the international discourse.
So does this vote at the UN General Assembly really change anything? Is it enough to pressure the United States to change its mind about moving its embassy to Jerusalem?
Perhaps after Trump, but not in the Trump administration. This is a man said, America first. And he wants to do those things that Washington had been afraid to do in the world. This is a man with a mission. Remember that Trump did not initiate this. As far back as 1995, you have this Jerusalem Embassy Act of 1995, which Article 7 allows for waiver every 6 months. It was to come into effect in 1998 and should ordinarily would have been relocated, the embassy of the United States,